Hello, everyone, and welcome to Hockey on the Spot with Brandon Barenfeld. I'm Brandon Barenfeld. Thank you all for joining me today. This is episode 2 of Hockey on the Spot. Today, I am going to try to keep this video much shorter, and today we're just going to get right into it. And today we will be looking up all the different free agent signings and trades that happened during this offseason, as well as maybe toward the end of the Stanley Cup Finals as well. Now, we can obviously spend all day talking about every single free agent signing that occurred during this off season, but instead of doing that, that would take up way too much time. I am going to highlight the top free agent signings in my personal opinion, probably the top five. I've not in exact order, of course. One of the big signings that have definitely happened this offseason, definitely had a few big ones like Ray Emery going back to the Philadelphia Flyers, Nate Rob Scuderi going back to the Pittsburgh Penguins, Clark MacArthur going to Ottawa. We definitely had quite a few big ones, but some of the biggest ones in my mind that occurred. One of the signings that definitely highlighted the free agents frenzy. Daniel Alfredsson going to the Detroit Red Wings. Wow, what a shock that one was, folks. It looked like he was pretty much going to be going back to Ottawa, and it pretty much was all but confirmed. So, and then all of a sudden he changed his mind pretty much at last minute. And then basically said he didn't want to return, and he went on to sign a one-year deal with the Detroit Red Wings. Definitely a heartthrobber for many Ottawa fans who are going to miss their longtime captain for sure. And Alfredsson, of course, will also be joined by Stephen Weiss, who's coming over from the Florida Panthers, signing a 5-year deal. He will be joining them to be their second-line center behind Pavel Datsyuk, and it's definitely a great move for Detroit. They need a second-line center now with Valtteri Filppula gone, which, by the way, is also another huge signing, in my opinion. Valtteri Filppula going to the Tampa Bay Lightning, signing a 5-year deal. That deal definitely will, I think, will have a bigger impact than everybody thinks. He's someone that Steve Yzerman really likes. He's got to know over the years in Detroit, and he can play either center or wing, but because of their lack of depth, for now he will be their second line center. So that will definitely be a huge deal for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And how about the Tampa Bay Lightning losing Vinny Lecavalier? They bought out the final 7 years of a long deal. Deal that went so long that everybody probably forgot how long he signed for. But anyway, his contract was bought out, and he would go on to sign almost immediately a 5-year deal with the Philadelphia Flyers. Vinny Lecavalier, though, former first overall draft pick back in 1998. And honestly, I thought he's been a great player in the National Hockey League, but not a first overall pick. Maybe a first round pick, but not a first overall pick. Especially now, him getting older and the injuries that he has, he's not a first line center anymore. But he is still a top 6 forward, a very deadly top 6 forward, big guy, and I think he's going to be a very popular player in Philly for sure. So definitely a big move by Paul Holmgren and the Philadelphia Flyers. And the Philadelphia Flyers would also go on to buying out the contract of Danny Briere. Briere then went on to sign a 2-year deal with the Montreal Canadiens, in which personally I'm on the fence with as far as the signing. I like the player. I think he's a very good player, and I think he's still got some strut left. But at the same time, this is just another small player, and the Canadiens are not very big up front. They need a bigger forward, and that's the big debate going around in Montreal. They need a bigger guy. So those are just some honorable mentions. But number 5 on my top free agent signing list, Daniel Alfredsson to the Detroit Red Wings. Number 4 on my top signing list, Mike Ribeiro leaving the Washington Capitals and going to the Phoenix or Arizona Coyotes. They will soon be called the Arizona Coyotes after this season. But anyway, Mike Ribeiro has proved with the Washington Capitals to be a capable, not even second-line center, a top-line center. And Phoenix, to me, they definitely need another center for sure. And this is a guy who is definitely going to be a popular player in Phoenix, and he's going to really fit their system. So I think it's a good signing by the Phoenix Coyotes. A guy who makes players around him better than they already are, for sure. That's my 4th top signing. My third top signing, Jerome Iginla leaving the Pittsburgh Penguins and going to the Boston Bruins. And a pretty funny situation. During the trade deadline, it pretty much looked like Iginla was going to be going to the Boston Bruins. Pete Chiarelli had a big trade offer up, trading away one of his top prospects in Koklachev, as well as another guy. And the trade was pretty much all but finalized, and it even looked finalized at one point. And then all of a sudden, at last minute, Jerome decides that he wants to go somewhere else. He doesn't want to go to Boston. He goes instead to the Pittsburgh Penguins. And look what happens. They meet the Boston Bruins in the Eastern Conference Finals, and Boston not only sweeps them, but limits them to just 2 goals. Sidney Crosby, and Evgeny Malkin, and Jerome Iginla were all left off the board. So then second time around, Iginla chooses the Boston Bruins this time, going there, signing a 1-year deal. Not like Vinny Lecavalier, not the same player. So definitely not the same player. He's getting a lot older. The age is starting to show. Not to mention, he's a guy who always has bad starts to his seasons, and he's got a lot to prove, I think, in Boston, and he'll probably be on the second line, a second line winger. He is a top 6, but I think he will be on the second line. So, that's my third top signing. My second best top signing, my second top signing that I'd like to talk about Jaromir Jagr going to the New Jersey Devils. Now, Jaromir Jagr, I think, I don't think he's going to be a fantastic player for the Devils, but the reason he's number 2 on my list is because of the fact that he is 41 years old, and it is a little bit on the shocking side to see him play another year. I know he had talked about playing another year. He had looked at a bunch of different teams, like the Montreal Canadiens, the Carolina Hurricanes were the big guys going after him at one point, but that fell short. And finally, though, he chose to play alongside his fellow teammate in the Czech Republic, Patrick Elias. So, those guys, great friends, and because of the friendship between those two, and because of the chemistry that those two have, with Team Czech Republic in Worlds, Olympics, whatever. Um, yeah, they'll both probably play on the same line, which will most likely be the top line. Jaromir Jagr is not a top line guy anymore, but because of the chemistry between him and Elias, he will probably play on the top line. Um, um, so I think that's a good signing by the Devils. I don't think it's a great signing, but it is number 2 on my list, my personal list. And last but not least, the number 1 signing, in my personal opinion, that happened this offseason is Nathan Horton going to the Columbus Blue Jackets. Um, I think it's a great move for the Columbus Blue Jackets. The contract, I may have a few arguments about the contract itself. I think it's a great player for the Columbus Blue Jackets to get, though. And really, for the first time ever, the Columbus Blue Jackets are actually getting serious with their trade acquisitions and free agent signings. We saw it last year at the trade deadline when they got Marian Gaborik in that blockbuster deal with the New York Rangers. Um, and they were pretty active in the draft this year as well. They got 3 caliber future players in Alexander Wenberg and Kirby Reichel and Marco Dano. And now they signed Nathan Horton to a blockbuster deal. The only complaint I have about the signing is his injury issues. Nathan Horton will not be starting the year until December, I'm pretty sure. He will not be starting the season until around December because of off-season surgery. And I think it's a great signing, though. I think it's a great signing. I just don't like the contract because of the injury issues. I don't like the contract at all. Um, I think it's a bad contract. I really do because of his injury issues. But I like the player, and that is why he is number 1 on my list. And I think he adds a new dimension to the Columbus Blue Jackets that they have not had, like, ever. Not even when Rick Nash was part of the team. Physical player, a good shooter, a hard worker. They get the whole package with Nathan Horton, a guy who's a sniper, at times can play like a sniper, and at other times plays like a power forward. So, former 3rd overall pick by the Florida Panthers in 2003, Stanley Cup champion with the Boston Bruins in 2011. So it also adds some Stanley Cup experience for the Columbus Blue Jackets, a 2-time Stanley Cup finalist, 1-time Stanley Cup champion. So I think it's definitely a good signing for them. I guess while I'm here, even though this is not on my top list, and there is a reason why this isn't on my top list, I might as well talk about the David Clarkson signing. David Clarkson going to the Toronto Maple Leafs. There is a legit reason why that's not on my top list of signings. He was the number 1 free agent of the offseason, but he is been way overrated this offseason, and the money he got, the contract, he got pretty much the same lengthy contract as Nathan Horton. It makes a lot more sense for Nathan Horton because he's a better player. For David Clarkson, this is not a top-line guy. Yeah, he's a good player, physical player at that, and an instigator, definitely. A guy who other teams and players hate to play against. But this is not a good. I don't like this. I don't like how he's getting this contract. He's not going to be on their top line. He's going to be on the top. He's going to be on their second line probably, or third line, but he's not going to be on their top line. They already have a top-notch top line with Phil Kessel and Joffrey Lupul. Tyler Bozak is, who was re-signed by the Leafs. He's not exactly a top-line center, in my opinion, but they really don't have great center depth. So, personally, I think at some point we could possibly see Nazem Kadri move up to that top line spot if he proves to be the same guy as he was last season. But anyway, I think this is a good signing by the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think it'll fit for them. I don't think he should have gotten that contract, though. I really don't, especially if he's going to not be the David Clarkson we saw the past 2 years with the New Jersey Devils, you know. Um, if he is playing on at his best, a guy who could definitely is a potential 20, 25 goal scorer. You know, it was a little surprising when he got 30 a few years ago, but he's going to be at most a 50-point scorer. So I don't know what to think about this. And a guy who I think his best attribute though is the ability to make plays with his physicality. So you know, and that's pretty much what you get with David Clarkson. Again, not a top line guy, so I don't understand the reason for the contract. And then you also had some other good signings too. Dustin Penner going back to the Anaheim Ducks. I thought that was a good signing for them. A guy who was experienced playing with Ryan Getzlaf and Corey Perry in the old point per game line. Derek Roy going to the St. Louis Blues, signing a 1-year deal. They needed another center. Nashville Predators were pretty active this offseason, signing a bunch of guys. Victor Stahlberg mainly. Victor Stahlberg and Matt Cullen mainly. Two skilled offensive players, though, of course, Matt Cullen getting on in his years. So, and yeah, we had some other good signings too. Joe Corvo going to back to Ottawa. So yeah. Also, quickly taking a look at some of the top available free agents. Mikhail Grabovski, the top available free agent, still looking for a place that needs a second line center. Damian Brunner's still there. Seems like he's getting close though. Teemu Solani, although it's pretty obvious he'll probably go back to the Anaheim Ducks if he goes back. Tim Thomas, Ilya Bryzgalov. Bryzgalov was bought out this offseason. So yeah, there's still some really good available names. Also, Brad Boyes, another one, the leading point scorer among the top 25 available free agents. Milan Hajduk, who if he can't find a place to go, will probably announce his retirement. So yeah, I think there's some good names still available. Mikhail Grabovski, obviously the big one, not going back to the Toronto Maple Leafs after everything between him and Randy Carlyle, which I won't go into detail about. So yeah, that's Anaheim, I've heard, is very interested. Edmonton, Washington, probably the front runners right now. So yeah, and also the other big deal this offseason, every restricted free agent who was supposed to go to arbitration, like Matt Zuccarello and others, Mark Frazier, were all signed. The last two players were signed yesterday, and those were the two names I mentioned. All right, guys, I'm going to break this down into two videos. There will be a Hockey on the Spot Part 2 coming up next, where I will talk about the top trades that have happened this offseason. So this has been Hockey on the Spot, and you've been watching Part 1. See you guys in Part 2. Later.